We have Brianna today as our guest host, and obviously me and Seth are returning again, back by popular demands. You know, and so we look forward to having a great show today and talking about the current events that have transpired over the past 2 weeks. Have been some crazy news from the president. Finding out that he cannot use the immunity defense. To speaking about what Nikki Haley chances are, and then going into ideology and the libertarian ideology versus the progressive ideology. We have a packed show, and I look forward to really diving in deep with Brianna to go over, her stance and what she believes and what ways we can move our country forward. So I look forward to it. I hope you guys are ready. And without further ado, Seth.
Welcome everybody. It's been a minute since we streamed. We're still trying to get our schedules in line ever since the end of the last year, which is pretty hectic for both of us. Do you not hear me? Do you hear me?
No, you froze up. You froze up for a second, but you're good now.
Yeah. We're back. Today we have Brianna. I've known Brianna for a while on Twitter. I don't know if any of you guys are already following them, but we should. You guys should follow Brianna. We'll put their plug at the end. You're working with the Center for New Liberalism, right? I'm not fully aware of what projects you're working on right now, but I'd love to hear about it.
Alrighty, well, first of all, thank you both for having me. I'm very glad to be here. I am working on a million things at once, as usual, unfortunately. Every time I tell myself I'm going to rest up a little bit from political stuff, I end up just putting 2 feet in again. As of right now, I'm on the steering committee of the Center for New Liberalism, and I'm also the Columbus chapter lead. Trying to do what I can on the ground, finally, in a much more meaningful way than I ever did back when I lived in New York. But
where do you live right now? Oh, you live in Ohio?
Yeah, I live in Columbus, Ohio.
That's a big change from Columbus to New York.
I got some beef with Columbus personally, but I'm a born and raised Michigan fan, so.
That state up north.
Yeah, the damn Ohio. We fought a war over this. There was a literal Michigan-Ohio war. I'm still mad about it.
I'm learning. I remember when the games started coming around, back when I worked at the movie theater, one of my managers was covering up all of the M's everywhere. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? And then I realized, it's a sports ball thing. I don't watch football or anything. So I was just completely oblivious to that entire rivalry and dynamic that was going on. But it's been very fun.
That rivalry started because Michigan fought a war with Ohio over Toledo in the 1800s. Nobody knows about, but we got the Upper Peninsula and they get to keep Toledo. So you can see who won that war. They get a dirty little town, and we get the entire Upper Peninsula with copper mines and and economic resources all around. So whatever.
We love Toledo. We love Toledo. The people of Toledo are great people.
Sure.
I've been there
some of them.
So far.
I'm sure some of them are great people.
Very nice people on both sides.
Yes. Oh man. So tell us. So what made you choose Ohio, coming from New York, big city to?
That's a good question.
Small town.
I guess that's mostly a personal question. I just moved there to be closer to my partner, basically.
Okay.
But so little bit of backstory. I grew up in New York City, in Queens in particular. Been there pretty much my whole life. Very briefly, I lived in upstate New York, really central New York, town of about 1,000 people, maybe 1,200 people, and I don't have a car. So when I had a little bit of an opportunity to move to Columbus, Ohio, I was like, well, I'm already living in the middle of nowhere. It can only get better. It cannot get worse.
True. Well,
however,
you did move to Columbus, but...
Yeah, however, moving from a deep blue state to arguably a red state has definitely been a bit of a culture shock. But
is Columbus... Columbus is probably pretty blue, though, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay.
Columbus is, and so are like the other cities.
Yeah.
But the state overall, there's a Republican supermajority. That's
Yeah, for sure.
quite. I can't really say it's purple anymore. I do think like the population of Ohio is definitely like not that Republican, but just
the
way
voter
that the
base.
district. Just there's a lot of gerrymandering, a lot of really, really bad maps. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to us in Florida, and Seth will tell you more about it. But we're kind of was that purple state for a very long time, and now we're like red. Like
yeah, Florida and Ohio do have a lot of similarities in that way. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so it's very. I understand what you're going through. It's a weird dynamic because in the cities it's very blue, like in Florida, but the state is red. And so you like here you have these completely two different ideologies like battling with each other. And so that kind of makes me think like how does someone comes from a liberal state like New York who has not necessarily liberal, but let's just say they're more progressive than Ohio, obviously. How do you take that and then try to what essentially I'm asking what made up your ideology? What makes your DNA you? And how do you use that to influence the politics in Ohio?
Wow. Okay, I'll try to break that apart best I can.
Yeah, that was a really good question. That's got me thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about New York City politics for a second. I will try to be very brief about it. New York City politics is like a beast of its own, as I'm sure most people around the country know. It's kind of just its own world, and it's where all the big dogs are playing, basically. It is very, very hard to get involved in electoral politics in New York City for the average person, especially for young people. So back when I was in New York City, I wasn't really working in politics. I was kind of just an activist and doing things with various like activist groups every so often. But now that I'm in Ohio, I've been trying to be a lot more serious about what I'm trying to do politically and get more involved in a more partisan way. So I'm working with different like Democratic Party groups in Ohio. Despite the Ohio Dems not having a whole lot of power in the state, I'm really trying to do what I can to help manifest more of that. And I'd say in terms of even between the two cities, even though they're both blue cities, the Democratic policies are quite different from New York and Columbus, Ohio. New York City definitely is, well, as everyone knows, far more progressive, but there are several members who are just of city council and such who are openly socialist.
Yeah, I would think of New York as being like a lot of left-wing base, but the people actually in power and elected politicians are a lot of more like Chuck Schumer, Kathy Hochul types,
So
there is AOC, but
yeah, across the state that's true, but in the New York City Council, there just have been more candidates that are openly identifying as socialists that are either winning or, if not winning, getting very close to winning.
Yeah,
which is something that you don't really see even in blue areas. Whereas with Columbus, Ohio, I'd say even though it's Democratic run, they're all like very moderate Democrats.
Tim Ryan types.
I'd say more progressive leaning than Tim Ryan.
Really,
but yes. Yeah. I do know a lot of Democrats who were unhappy about Tim Ryan's messaging when he last ran. Personally, I think it was really just
strategic.
A marketing thing.
Yeah.
I don't really. I mean,
he ran for president. It wasn't a very progressive campaign, but no, you could tell the way the rhetoric was definitely very conservative. I agree.
Yeah. He was trying to appeal to the Trump base, and I get it. You kind of have to when you're in that type of situation.
Unless you're Sherrod Brown.
Yeah. But I mean, I still feel like a lot of his, not so much his messaging, but his policies do appeal to that like stereotypical middle class worker that's been forgotten.
Are you referring to Sherrod Brown or Tim Ryan now?
Both of them. but
They're
they're
definitely
they're
more
definitely
populist.
utilizing. Yeah, they're utilizing different types of messaging strategies to reach that same base of people. Um,
Yeah, so that kind of independent voter who's like, I always say independent voter, kind of like a libertarian a little bit, because
Yeah.
they don't really like the most libertarians. They're very conservative when it comes to fiscal issues.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's they're calling
And just
card, and
government in general. Yeah.
yeah, just in general, and it tends to their ideology tends to kind of lean a little bit into progressivism because a lot of it, well, not a lot of it, but a small minority of it does deal with freedoms, which we preach as progressives sometimes,
Yeah,
of the
and a lot of
freedoms to
social issues, I feel like they're a lot more like, I might personally have my opinions, but I'm not going to use the government to interfere in your life. So,
exactly. Yeah, so like things like abortion rights and um, what are some other hot topics that we tend to
gun
have the same
rights.
view. Yeah, I tend to have the same views with libertarians as progressive as and those things where it's government shouldn't be telling people what to do with their body and their lives. And
Yeah.
so I know Brianna, you explored a
LGBTQ
little bit
issues. Yeah.
exactly. We tend
or
to be on the same.
vaccines.
Your
Yeah,
marijuana
that's a
possession.
mixed bag with vaccines.
Yeah,
Oh
well,
yeah.
it
Libertarians are
depends
very
on.
mixed on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've had quite a few conversations even recently about that the whole vaccine debate thing and I've had the god awful hot take of believing that the lockdowns weren't that bad. I think that if you believe that the purpose of government is to protect people to the best of their ability with the knowledge they have, I think that's exactly what was done at the time.
It depends on
Um,
which state, but generally I agree for sure.
yeah,
California might have
yeah.
been too restrictive in certain areas, and Florida was
yeah.
obviously not restrictive enough, but I'm sure Ohio is a lot more like generally let's keep 6 feet away, wear a mask,
Yeah, I was
just
still living
common
in New York.
knowledge.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I was living in New York City during the pandemic, so I definitely have seen, the worst of the lockdown policies. But again,
Hmm.
it still didn't bother me very much. And I'm also personally biased because I lost someone. So whenever I hear these libertarians talking about, oh, it's my right to not wear a mask, blah 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 blah, and all these other things, it's like, you know, it's just it's very frustrating to have those conversations.
I have the
No,
right to
I
spread diseases that kill people. I have the right to do that. Why would the government have any vested interest in preventing that? Like,
Yeah,
well
and
the
it's
thing
like,
is, no, go ahead, Brianna.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, like, there's a point where people can definitely have discussion and debate over like good or bad policy, but then there's a point where sometimes people are just so blindsided by government bad, government is evil, everything the government does is wrong, and can't really get past that view, which I kind of think is just a childish worldview.
I don't
Um,
think it's even government is bad, government is wrong. I think it's Democrats are bad, Democrats are wrong. Because the second they're in
oh
power,
yeah,
they drop all that stuff. It's not they don't care about the size of the government, they care about who's in charge of the government. So if the
Hmm.
Democrats are in charge, it's rah rah, government is evil. You can't trust them with anything. Also, we should put some restrictions on which books people are allowed to read, and we should get parental rights protected by the government, and you know
yeah,
arrest teachers who teach these concepts, and yeah, they don't really care.
yeah. Did you guys hear about the? I think she's a candidate for office. God, I don't even know where, but the woman who was taking a flamethrower and burning books.
Yeah, I've seen that.
What? What was that?
uh, I don't know, some far right. Was it a Floridian? Had to have been.
Probably. I don't know. I don't.
Oh, come on.
It
Is
had to have
that
been, man.
they're
It
from
always
Florida jokes?
is.
Yeah.
Either
So
way, yeah.
you, so you being a oh, you're not a libertarian. What do you actually
Kind of.
identify
You
as?
gotta.
Do you like? Okay, so that is also a really good question. I mean,
Hmm.
terminology can just get so muddied constantly. Right now, I've dropped the libertarian label. Even if I'm using it correctly, other people aren't, and I'm kind of just
Yeah.
sick of having the conversations. Like, oh no, I'm not an ethno nationalist, and I don't want to
Yeah.
start my conversations like that constantly.
Yeah.
So now I just use the term liberal. Sometimes I use the term progressive. Very rarely. It just depends on how you're using it, because I've always considered myself a progressive and am super socially progressive.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to those particular policies like Medicare for all and stuff like that, or the Green New Deal, that's where I kind of get a little bit, I don't want to say queasy, because I'm not just like, oh, I hate those or anything like that. But
More
I'm willing to
agnostic.
admit it. Yeah, I'm willing to admit that I don't have solidified opinions on every single issue, and especially when it comes to like healthcare policy, I don't even know where to begin there. So I don't ever even attempt to project my views on that. Like my view of healthcare policy is just, I don't want people to die because they're poor, and I don't have any other opinions on that.
Yeah.
I'd say you're a lot more socially progressive, like a civil libertarian with more economic moderate policies. From my perspective.
For sure. Yeah. I'm definitely like not all that right-leaning on economic policies. I believe in a market-based system and a strong social safety net.
Which I actually think seems to be a change since like the last time we were really talking a lot, because you were a lot more economically libertarian at the time. I don't even remember you supporting a lot of safety net issues. So, I mean, I do feel like you moved a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
I don't think I moved all that much. What really happened was I didn't talk about a lot of the things I did support because I had a very right-wing following. And because of that, I intentionally didn't talk about a lot of these things. Like, for example, I've supported UBI for years, really.
Yeah.
But anytime I would say anything, even like a little bit left wing, like all of the attack dogs would come out. So I kind of just didn't talk about those things. I would just, keep them on the low key, which I shouldn't have to, but
Well, because because I mean, right now it's like these words sometimes are trigger words, and people don't actually look at the actual policies; they just look at the word, And
in terms of UBI, sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No. Explain UBI. Your take on it.
In terms of UBI, like I've been seeing more and more studies being done on it that are showing like, hey, this works. Like this is having positive effects, and the downsides that people have been speculating about haven't really been happening in any of these studies so far, which I think is really promising. But a lot of people just want to be like, oh no, that's socialism. Or then we have the people who are socialists who are like, it's not socialism. It doesn't go far enough. But I just think right now, like I'm at the point where I really want to see more policy that's just based on, studies that are showing us that this is something we should try because it has positive benefits for people. That's where I'm at.
I feel like if your politics is not based in utilitarianism and consequentialism, then you're kind of like wasting your time. If it's not based on the actual given data, the actual consequences of the policies, and it's just like ideologically based political positions, you're gonna end up with some bad policies. You know what I mean? It has to be down to, well, I mean, you have to have certain values because your policies have to match your intended goals. Like I would like to reduce income inequality. Well, then let's just raise minimum wage to $50 an hour. Blah 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 blah. That doesn't necessarily fix the issue. You got to actually figure out which policies reduce income inequality, not just like posturing. This is left wing. I'm going to take off any policy that's left leaning. So I don't know. I feel like that's where we differ from a lot of leftists per se.
Yeah, and I've actually been thinking about this a lot because I personally don't even know if I'm more like of a deontologist or like a consequentialist. But definitely, I feel like there has to be some sort of middle ground, and I'm not as well versed in this type of philosophy as I'd like to be quite yet. But I definitely am now really starting to see the divide, especially in the circles that I've been in, because I've been in very radical circles on both ends for years. So it is quite refreshing to actually start seeing people who are talking about policy that's actually based on data and evidence-driven policy. It's very refreshing. It seems a lot more normie and moderate and boring to talk about that, but I want to see what works best for the greatest amount of people. At the same time, I also think that we do need to have some hardline beliefs. Because, for example, if 90% of Americans want to ban immigration, I still wouldn't support that, even if 90% of Americans want to do that. So I think there's, it's a bit of a balancing act.
You guys were seeing the whatever the headlines that were coming out today talking about the actual economic results of immigration surge or whatever. They're talking about because of increased immigration, there's something like $7 trillion is added to our GDP, something like that. Yet we have a crisis at the border. Yeah.
The only crisis at the border is that we're not letting people in.
Yeah. We're creating super restrictive policies that kind of force people who are going to come into the country anyways to use illegal methods and to use dangerous methods that, you know what I mean? We're subsidizing the cartel by making it more complicated. So it's kind of the thing that nobody really talks about. Even Biden is kind of giving into right-wing messaging on immigration. And it's really frustrating for me because if we've learned anything over the last 30 years, it's us catering to right-wing messaging only strengthens the right. It doesn't help us win or move forward progressive policies. It just makes our voter base assume that the right is somewhat correct about certain ideas, which they're not. So we should just lead the messaging.
And what's interesting about that, what's interesting to me about that is that I don't even think it's working. I think Biden could say all of the right things that Republicans want to hear, and they're still not going to give it. So
all he's doing is they're going to feel the same way about him, and he's alienating the left-wing base, and he's alienating other people. Like right now, his opinion, not his opinions, but his actions on Gaza have led to him. I think he was at 60 plus something, super high majority of Muslim voters voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and that's dropped to like 17%. And that doesn't sound like a major problem because how many people are Muslim? If you don't think about the fact that there's something like 30,000 something Muslim voters in Michigan that literally handed him the state, the electoral votes in that state. So it's like we're giving up a state, a very consequential state, to win. What are we getting out of this constant, endless war in Gaza? It's not helping the American people. It's not helping anybody. It's just actually helping hand over our government to Republicans, which is only going to make it worse. So,
but the problem is with the Gaza thing. It's like Biden's in a tough spot because he's in like two different camps. Which I mean, you can't be two people, but that's what he's trying to be right now. It's like, well, I want to appease the voters in Minnesota and most of the Muslim community, because there is a big growing trend in that direction in the party. But the Jewish community has always been that kind of the bankroll of the Democratic Party, and they provide usually all the campaign financing, the financing that happens. So what ended up happening is a lot of times that he has to kind of double talk. It's like, yeah, I'm with Palestine, but I don't want to offend the Jews or the Jewish people and Jewish nationals, because what happens is that's a big donor base for the Democratic Party. So he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. And it's like, if you got to stand where you sit, and at the end of the day, if you really truly believe that, that Israel's gone too far, then you need to put a stop to it, because we're the one who funds Israel anyway. So all the weapons that they have, it's pretty much us. We can.
The most ridiculous thing I see about that is the fact that why are we funding them? They are one of the biggest, most powerful militaries in the world, and they're fighting against like guerrilla fighters who are not doing anything in retaliation comparison. Like the death toll is substantially weighted in one direction. They're not at all at any sort of risk of losing this conflict, that they need us to send billions of dollars when they have their own fully funded military. It just doesn't really make sense. I understand that there's a geopolitical strategy of, they are anti-Iran and we're trying to, it's a geopolitical soft war between all these other Iran supported countries and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's just the messaging we're sending to the rest of the world that like we're not going to bat an eye over tens of thousands of innocent people dying like over a couple months. Ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conflict going on right now in the Middle East is a really tough situation for any president to be in, especially Biden, given everything going on like domestically as well. And I don't think there's really any good solutions. The only thing we can do is just try to argue for humanitarian aid to just get into the area as of right now. But beyond that, I don't really know how much more like the United States can actually do. Like,
I don't think we should do more necessarily, as much as we should stop funding, the war. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we need to stop the conflict and we need to force Netanyahu. No. Let's just stop giving him weapons and bombs that they're already so much more powerful of a military than not January 6th. The October 7th attack was bombs dropped by they're on hand gliders or some shit like that. There was no helicopters. They don't have missile launchers. They don't have they're literally like archaic military strategies that they're using against Israel, and Israel has literally one of the most well-funded militaries in the world. Yeah. And I just don't see what I don't have a problem with taxpayer money going towards Ukraine because there's legitimate reasons for us to be funding Ukraine's self-defense. I just don't see why we're funding Israel. I don't know.
I think part of it is also just because we're allies. I think that's what it is too. I think if any of our ally countries were in crisis, we'd be expected to do the same thing.
I just don't think that's something that we should be automatically expected to do. I think it should be a lot more. We should have a lot more critical of a lens of the things that we're funding overseas, because we've done things in the past that have negative externalities that have led to, Al Qaeda being a bigger, like Osama bin Laden. We helped fund the counter insurgency or whatever against when the Soviet Union was occupying Afghanistan, and guess who kept those weapons and 20 years later use them against us, that kind of stuff.
Of course.
So I mean, that's why I think we should be a lot more critical about how we spend our money in general, not just because of waste, but because you don't know what you're incentivizing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of my ideology across the board. It's not just overseas, and I'm not an economic conservative or anything like that, but I think we need to be a lot more critical about how what we're incentivizing, whether it comes to incentivizing corporate cheats or incentivizing all sorts of things. There's a lot of different things in which we need to be a lot more scrupulous about, taxpayer money.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to understand that, the modern warfare, and you've heard me say this several times, that the modern warfare is not on the battlefield of traditional military boots or anything like that.
Yeah.
The modern warfare is in the middle class of the people that we have. So our forces and our strength is to come to intellectual, to ideas, and how are we strengthening our actual economies of ideas in America. So when I look at funding for Israel, I look at it through that lens. We're spending billions of dollars for them to seek revenge on almost tenfolds of what happened to them.
Yeah.
Almost
at this point.
folds.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of this whole encompassed story. We're also sending money to Ukraine and Russia.
Well, not to Russia.
Which is no, I'm sorry, for the Ukraine and Russia war, but to Ukraine, which is a little more justifiable because they're trying to be, Russia's trying to annihilate them.
And Russia's probably would expand past Ukraine if they had the chance. Like it's we're putting our feet in the boots or feet in the whatever phrases.
Feet in the snow. feet in the
Something.
snow. I think it
We stick our
would
feet
be
in
more
the snow.
appropriate getting the Ukraine and Russia's like in the cold area.
Yeah,
But
We've
no,
also got
so
Taiwan to think about.
true.
we also have Taiwan. So these things they're to the point where it's like I'm not the idea that we are limited. It's farce. I mean, at the end of the day, America could be in all three wars
Yeah.
and still be and survive. But the problem is, it's hard to justify these wars when you have people when you have such high homelessness in America.
Yeah,
You
and
have
we're not. What
such
have we
high
passed in the last couple years? Like, there's so much lack of. I think there was like the longest period of no bill passing in hundreds of years or something like that recently. Like, absolutely nothing's passing Congress, and it's. I mean, we had a
yeah.
few bills passed in the first 2 years, and we've gotten a little bit of stuff changed here and there. But at the end of the day, our legislature is basically non-functional. And
It's
I
Yeah,
don't
not.
think that that's in anybody's best interest.
yeah, absolutely. Just as it's like a stalemate. So
Yes,
it's
that was the word I was
I don't
looking
think
for.
I've ever quite I don't think I've ever quite seen anything like this with what's happening right now in American government in
Yeah,
our political system. But and I
Yeah.
don't know when it'll stop. But as of right now, it's ridiculous. It's both ridiculous and scary to watch.
yeah.
Yeah. I
It's not
mean,
very optimistic thinking about like, oh, we can make all this change in the next election. When really it feels more like we're fighting to maintain the lack of action that we're
divisiveness.
already at. It's like, oh, this is better than Republicans passing everything left and right. So let's just stick with our little stalemate, and it's more preferable to like we can't really even envision any sort of progressive policy changes in the next 4 years with how close it is in Congress, all across the board, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's also why it's so important to not overlook what's happening at the state level,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people are constantly just focused on what's happening federally, but a lot of this um, political animosity stems from like the state level, because
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing Republicans gaining a lot of ground in places where historically they haven't, and we're seeing Democrats lose that ground. Um, and I'm not sure exactly what can be done to prevent things from further sliding. And I guess I am one of those people who would prefer the stalemate to Republicans passing everything because then, you know,
Yeah.
we as of right now, this point in time, things would be pretty bad. If we
Yeah.
see another presidency, it'll be pretty bad.
It's gonna be substantially worse than the last one because he was still trying to play off that he's a working class hero and he's gonna be the president to save the blue collar workers and all that stuff. And he doesn't care about any sort of messaging after this point. Like he's just
Yeah.
all ego, all his own achievements or lack of, I don't know, his contributions to the stalemate and to the lack of action in Washington D.C. And he just wants to mess it up like a tornado, and he's gonna run on that, and he'll feel proud about it, which is
And
not good for us.
we can't even pretend that it's about the issues anymore that he initially ran on because at this point in time, we're not even operating on the same plane of existence.
Yeah.
Like as of right now, Democrats are dealing with many Republicans who are just not even accepting basic reality.
Oh yeah, it's a prerequisite.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people, especially like moderate independents, I don't think a lot of people really realize the danger that's happened since 2016. Because and I've said this before, but Trump definitely isn't the most dangerous part of everything. He's just emboldened a new level of terror in this country that's just been consistently getting worse. Like
he's a catalyst for the already far right base.
Yeah, there's been a significant rise in right-wing domestic terrorist cases like in the country since 2016 and especially since 2018.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just know that we have to just hold the ground by any means necessary, and then at that point we can start moving in the right direction again. But
yeah, I don't know how any Republican could, in good faith, say that Trump cares about the issues when there's a bipartisan bill of policies that he advocates for and recommends that he doesn't want passed now because he won't get credit for it. So, which is as indicative of that he doesn't care about the people or the policies or anything at all. He just cares about putting achievements next to his name. Which is absurd.
And I mean, like, and to me, as a young person, I don't even understand how he was elected the first time to begin with. So I'm still in disbelief from that happening. And now I'm at the point where you have to just recognize that we're not dealing with people who are acting reasonably anymore, who are actually promoting what are policies that benefit people.
It's really hard to run on reason when 45% of the country doesn't have that as a value. So it's like, how do you reach the people that don't really see policy as or data-driven points as important? They'll look at the data and say, well, who did the data? Oh, it was a liberal data. Just assuming every single thing that they hear and see is through a lens of some government conspiracy to trick you and manipulate you. And when you see it through that lens, that's where the conspiracy brain starts. And every single thing that's ever happened and has been, reported is a lie. And it starts to make sense how 2016 happened.
And it happened a lot faster than we could have ever perceived.
Well, it's all about math. 2016 was, and Hillary Clinton just didn't do the right math. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why we lost. And that's, at the end, because she won the popular vote by like 3 million.
I think it was 7. Was this? No, maybe that's Biden. Maybe that's Biden who got 7.
She won a popular vote. It's just bad politics,
Well, it was mostly bad strategizing, and there was a lot of presupposition, presumption that the Democrats would run away with this election, so they didn't put a lot of effort into canvassing and bringing out the vote in swing states and stuff like that, the more consequential states, because if you look at the national polls, she's winning every single election. And you know what, the polls weren't that far off from what actually happened. If you look at national polls, she won by 3 millions of votes, literally. But when you look at state by state and the things that actually matter to win the election, to get the electoral votes, she didn't strategize the right way. And a lot of people didn't show up to vote because of that, sort of condescending behavior towards, regular Americans who are kind of sick of being looked past, ignored, or at least the feeling that they were. So there was a lot of bad decisions or a lot of things overlooked in 2016. And I don't know. I'm very fearful of us doing that again. At least Trump has put something in the Democratic Party that makes us a lot more willing to show up to vote. You know what I mean? A lot more willing to contribute to something and not taking polls for granted, stuff like that.
Yeah, and not just the rise of the MAGA movement, but also just the domino effect. Now that Roe has fallen, we've seen a direct correlation between that and between Democrats actually getting out to vote and voting.
The actual consequences of not showing up and just assuming, my vote doesn't matter. If everybody had that idea, then your vote truly did not matter,
Yeah, and then now it's at the point where people are starting to realize oh shit, we can turn things around again. For example, in Ohio, despite the Republican supermajority, we just legalized marijuana and protected reproductive rights. So it's even though we're in this deep red state with only a handful of Democrats who are not able to actually get anything done because they're in a sea of red, the voters wanted what the voters wanted.
If you go policy by policy, not every state, most states vote for Democrats. But if you put a D or R next to the name, that's where things change. If you take half of these blue collar policies that are, advocated for by Democrats and say Trump said it, just watch how the Republican Party would change. It would change overnight. half their policies they would drop at the, you've seen them completely change ideologies with Trump, like in real time, like overnight. You'll see them say one thing, Trump says something else, then they all agree with Trump. Like my dad, diehard Dick Cheney voter, like he's like, I'd vote for Dick Cheney in a heartbeat. Love George Bush, blah 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 blah. Trump selected. I hate George Bush. Oh, I won't vote for George Bush. Blah 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 blah. Like no, it's just absolutely. What's the word I'm thinking?
He's populist. He's not really a Republican. He's not an ideology person.
That's kind of most of the Republican base now. There's not a lot of committed ideological Republicans anymore. They're just sort of anti-liberal. They're not really dogmatic about which policy positions or stances at all. It's just they want to be some sort of renegade, and they want to be set apart from standard liberal mainstream ideas.
Yeah, they're very reactionary to whatever the left is doing.
Yeah, pretty much. Not even the left. They're the most strawmanned, made up version of the left that they perceive, which in their mind, everybody's some sort of, I can't even imagine what they're saying nowadays. Trans, pedophile, like conspiracy, Jewish, like I don't even know. They're super conspiracy minded, and every single politician is controlled by the devil and like absolutely batshit crazy things.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier, like it's at the point where like some people are just not operating in the same reality as us anymore, and I don't think we should be pandering any of our messages to them, quite frankly. And sorry if that makes me sound like an elitist, but if you're sitting here thinking that there's a new world order that Satan is using to control, to control the Democratic Party and just all of these other things, or that Jews are running the world and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories left and right. I don't want to even have the discussion or the debate anymore, the argument. I just want to avoid dealing with this sort of nonsense.
It sounds like a joke, but like 3 in 10 Americans would actually believe half that shit, which is frustrating.
There's been a rise in QAnon believers in the last couple of years,
or at least ideas that originated from QAnon.
Yeah, and there's a significantly greater amount now of Republicans who believe that in using political violence to defend the country, for patriots to defend the country against what they perceive as, this new world order, or the radical left, or whatever the case might be. So it's concerning.
It's very concerning because usually what happens in these moments, our political figures step in and say that, hey, this is not correct behavior. And the problem is we don't have those leaders anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's my biggest problem with the Democratic Party is just the absolute lack of leadership. Like Nancy Pelosi is not really a leader anymore. Joe Biden is the de facto leader, but we don't really see much from him. We'll see tweets, which, are written by staff. We'll see an occasional scripted speech. But at the end of the day, he's not doing a lot to contribute to the messaging of the Democratic Party. He's not really a leader. He's not the kind of person who his ideology is changing the opinions of the base. The way that Obama did, the way that even Bernie did. Like, we're just in a complete absence of leadership, of people that can set an agenda and can lead a movement of people and inspire people to show up to vote and actually believe that something can change in this country. Because Joe Biden, we've seen almost.
Obama.
Yeah, Obama had, I don't know. People believed him in at first. 2008 he was that person. But, Biden.
How long can we hold on to Obama? Wait.
What was that?
How long can we hold on to that? That was almost 15 years ago.
Well, he's the best. Other than Bernie, he's been the most transformational political figure since I don't even know how long.
Yeah, but that was
our lifetimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But he left office in what was it? Almost 8 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his administration is still in power. Joe Biden, you know what I mean? A lot of the same figures are. I mean, John Kerry just resigned from the administration. He was still. They're just running the same figures at the top of the. There's not a lot of change in the Democratic leadership either. Like they've been running with the same Clinton-esque status quo for like the last 20 years. They don't
have young leaders.
Yeah. Or they're not elevating the leaders or the young people to leadership. They're kind of sticking with a lot of the same ideas. There's definitely a lot of shift in the base, but that has not yet translated to shift in power, which
at least not on the federal level.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because I do think on the state level, we're seeing
Minnesota,
more young leaders stepping up to the plate, and
especially in the Midwest. Midwest has been becoming a lot less competitive, in my opinion, in a good way. Maybe other than Ohio, Wisconsin's becoming more progressive. I see. I think Michigan. I don't know how I feel about Michigan. Michigan overall is more progressive than it was in 2016, but I mean, at the same time, there's still a giant base that has been alienated. Like the Muslim base is in like Dearborn. I don't even know. They're probably going to turn into Robert F. Kennedy voters. Like they're not going to vote for Trump, but they sure as hell ain't voting for Biden. So I don't know what that's going to turn out like. What do we think about all the third party candidates still in the race?
What third party candidates?
West, Robert F. Kennedy, potentially no labels. Apparently.
I think the country's kind of spoke. I think the country's already spoken. They just want Biden and Trump. Even though we're saying we don't want them, we've kind of said that we want them.
Yeah, but there's still a sizable portion of the population that is voting for third party in polls, and that takes directly from Biden. So they are, as much as we know they're not going to win, they still play a transformational role in this upcoming election. Like I'm not the kind of person that thinks 2016 was Jill Stein's fault. That's some bullshit. Jill Stein did not affect the election. The amount of people that voted for Jill Stein that would have also voted for Hillary Clinton is way less than people think. They would have voted for another third-party candidate, some socialist party, or they would not have shown up at all. They're not Hillary Clinton voters that are like, you know what? I'm leaning more towards Jill. No, they were. It's basically a protest vote in the first place. But this year, there's a big shift of people who voted for Biden in 2020 who are now just done with him. And that's a huge problem because it was kind of a close race when it comes to like the actual consequential states and the amount of votes that it took to win. So I'm very concerned personally. And I hear like Biden's ramping up some sort of big attack against all these candidates because at this point, the Biden administration is pretty aware that their main strategy to get back in the White House or to stay in the White House is to take those votes back from third-party candidates.
I mean, I don't even think that the third-party candidates are going to pull very much from Biden at all because quite frankly, I don't think most of them are even going to get on the ballot.
I agree with that take more than anything.
Yeah.
Like a lot of states are not going to get on the ballots but that's why Robert F. Kennedy is, he's polling so high at one point, but now he's talking about, running as a libertarian, which is kind of hilarious because no libertarian voters actually want him. Like very few.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think somebody with name recognition like him could pull a decent amount of votes, but I think at the end of the day, voters are probably going to fall in line. If they're showing up to vote at all, they're probably going to vote red or blue.
Agreed.
And quite frankly, like I'd be a little bit irritated at people on the left who are, going to either vote, against Biden or not vote, given
what's at
what
stake.
We've seen from you. Yeah. I mean, we already went through 2016 and so many people said, oh, Trump won't do this. He won't do that. That's not going to happen. Roe v. Wade is not under attack. And now look at what happened, right? I hope that enough people have woken up. But you know what? I'm not so sure unless people are feeling the presence of the threat, I think that a lot of people just tend to overlook what that actually is. And then once it hits them and once they start having their own rights and civil liberties violated, then they might start to care.
Yeah,
But
I do think it's
hopefully we get to that point.
I do think it's a lot easier to be critical of Biden and to be agnostic about voting for him at this point in the race when he's not even technically the nominee yet. He's gonna be, but
Yeah.
once it actually gets down to it, and once Trump gets a lot more mainstream again, not that he ever was out of it, but he kind of he's been
He's the only choice.
blacklisted from a lot of places. And once people are starting to realize like he has a legitimate chance of being in power again and partying himself and implementing fascist, political angles and movements, stuff like that. I think people
and
will
yet
start
so
to
many
wake up.
American voters want that. That's
Or they don't
that's what
see
we're
the
dealing
threats really, because they're more like,
Yeah.
oh, well, the left is saying this, the right is saying this. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe Biden did a little bit of rigging of the election. Like that's how the non-political, down the middle American sees things. It's like literally halfway Republican, halfway Democrat, which is not. It's not the real world either. It's some sort of
or
like,
arguably maybe the Overton window is shifting to the right with a lot of those folks too. I think that's a possibility as well.
I don't know. I don't even know if it's a left or right thing. I think so many people just don't want to vote for somebody who's 78 or whatever Biden is.
Yeah, and that's
he's 80s.
Fair. Yeah,
Biden's already 81, isn't he?
Yeah, that's his biggest issue, his age.
Yeah.
Like if it had been his 3 years younger, he would kill Trump in the
to all the politically active people. It's not an issue. We're aware what presidents do and administrations are really the thing we're voting for. But to the average American that's like only shows up to vote for presidents and doesn't know anything, they're like, well, I hear Trump and he seems confident, and I hear Biden and he's stumbled, he's stuttered in this way, and I don't know if I can trust Biden again. It's like they don't really know what's actually at stake. And what
they're not considering everyone who is being employed at the White House or otherwise who are actually doing the day-to-day tasks to help run the country. It is not just the president doing that. Some folks need to go watch The West Wing or something. I don't know.
Those are just the aesthetic voters, the ones that are like, I could drink a beer with George Bush, but
that's great. I can drink a beer with a lot of people. Do I want them running the country? No, I absolutely do not.
I do wish our political party system was a lot less of popularity contest and more about actual policies and actual consequences and stuff. And I think part of it is because it's a bifurcation of political views where we only have left or right, black and white. You know what I mean? There's good and bad. There's not a lot of nuance. And I think having something like a parliamentary system where, I agree with this party and, I'm a social democrat and I agree with them, but we'll have a coalition with more moderate groups and this, that. It allows you to actually realize where you stand and which issues you separate from other groups with. And you can agree with some groups and some things and disagree with other. But here it's like Republicans agree with this, boom. I'm going to do the opposite of that. Boom. It's all black and white. And I think it's very obvious in how Americans think. I think it has a lot to do with, the system that we set up for ourselves and the political and sociological opinions that we've allowed as a mainstream option, essentially.
Yeah. And a lot of us have kind of just gotten lost in the sauce. And I don't mean us as in the politicos, but I just mean voters in general. The people who are running for office hardly ever talk about, very specific policies. They kind of just talk about their concepts and ideas, but not really how to get from A to Z. And quite frankly, the average voter doesn't care about that.
They really don't know.
Perhaps they should, and
they don't care about.
Yeah, I was gonna say politicians don't have an incentive to talk about their specific policies because voters don't want to know about them because
I agree.
They don't understand. So I think that's a shift we have to move towards.
Voters would rather hear a politician advocate for universal health care, then we should have a multi-tiered system where this funding goes to here. No, they don't want to do that because that's
Yeah.
alienating to the people that do want universal health care, but not that specific system. So it's a lot easier to just be vague. I want
Yeah.
universal
Yeah.
health care. I want equality, as if that has any meaning. You know what I mean? And I don't think
Yeah.
that these political messaging helps sharpen the minds of any sort of voter because, they don't know what any of those terms mean, and they can equality. I don't want my neighbor to make the exact same amount as me. I work twice as many hours as him. Absolute brain
Yep.
dead. None of it translates to policy, but Republicans seem to think that Democrats want to fucking control every aspect of the economy to make it completely equal or something. They're absolute worst fears because we don't specify what we mean. And
Yeah, and
so
it's
there's
blatantly not true either. I saw a study recently that said, 85% of Democrats believe that, they're trying to make capitalism work for the American people. Like the
mhm.
vast majority of Democrats are not even running on anything close to socialist policies. They're
And
just
even if they
running
would value a socialist economy, they would never. They still have to work in the capitalist economy. It's not like we're introducing
yeah,
policies that just don't work in the current economic system. They're just
yeah,
advocating for reform, a
yeah.
direction. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
they're advocating for welfare capitalism, but meanwhile, on the flip side, like the same amount of Republicans think that, the Democratic Party is overrun by socialists. And if you are a socialist in the Democratic Party, you obviously know that is not true.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
very true.
yeah. They have no
Yeah.
idea what socialism even means. They still
No,
they
no.
think Biden is a communist that was controlled by China, and words have no meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I tell you this, guys. I think that, you know, we're trying to kind of advocate a new direction for the party, the Democratic Party, but you guys are totally right. We definitely have this bipolarism that's happening. That if one person essentially says this, the other has to say that, and it's very different throughout American history because American history we've always had multiple parties,
Mm-hmm.
and the reality is, I think the only way we can change that is through the people, and I think the people are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I do think
the
the Republican
problem
Party has changed dramatically.
they are,
They used to be a super like fiscally conservative Tea Party, anti-government, yada yada. 2010 Republican Party is so much different than this populist, right-wing populism, new national conservatism that's stemmed out of Trumpism. And I don't think that we should just assume that the Democratic Party can't change for the better. Change is very very possible. It just takes somebody, a leader. That's why I've been talking about leadership. People need somebody to latch onto, somebody to inspire them, that they can feel confident in, and that person has to be good at advocating policies, because right now there's people are still shaped by the Democratic leaders of the last 2 decades. Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. Those are the people that have shifted most people's political opinions. Not a lot of
yeah,
legislators do a lot of changing of minds because they don't get a lot of attention, frankly.
yeah. But I think we're gonna have a correction too in the Democratic Party
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't done it yet.
Yeah,
Right now we've had this liberal ideology kind of taking shape for the last 50, 60 years.
yeah,
And I get it. I mean, they had no other choice because we wasn't winning elections. So you had Bill Clinton come out with this new liberal idea, like I'm a
mm-hmm.
conservative, but really I'm a Democrat.
Yeah,
And it's and winning us elections for a while. I mean, Barack Obama did it. He used the
yeah.
same
Did the same
playbook
strategy.
as same strategy. And now the strategies, well, Biden even did it himself. Did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they are using the same playbook, and I feel like we haven't had that correction moment yet in our
Mm-hmm.
party. And I think what's important is that conversations like these is starting to push that narrative of, hey, we need a different direction because people are not going to vote for Republican light that we're
Yeah,
trying to portray. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what they have in Trump. because Trump is not really, he's not a conservative.
He's
It's
just a
he's
celebrity that can gain enough attention that they can get voters. That's essentially all he is.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's all he is. He's not a conservative. He's not. That's not his thing. But Trump is one. Trump's playbook is do whatever I can to win. I'll say whatever I have to say. I'll do whatever I have to do.
I think it's whatever he
to
can
win.
do to get more love from the people that already support him, essentially.
Exactly.
He's not trying to win
So
new voters. He's just trying to satisfy the people that already like him.
This is why we need a celebrity who can beat Trump. We need Taylor Swift.
Or Jon Stewart. I'm just going to say it.
Fair, but how cool would it be to have Taylor Swift as the first woman president?
I am a hater of Taylor Swift personally, but I understand the perspective.
She doesn't make music for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Same here. I listen to like emo and punk. I think she's a likable enough person where like most of the country likes her. Like the only people who are genuinely hating on her right now are like the far right who think that she's like trying to leash money off of her football player boyfriend. Like which is very funny.
Or trying to use her football player boyfriend to actually endorse Biden and then win him the election, and it's a fake relationship and they're getting absolutely brain dead.
The conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you guys think about this? What's his name? Carlson Tucker, whatever his name is.
Oh, Tucker
Carlson.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson meeting with Putin.
Clearly, I don't watch him. Yeah.
Oh well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, he's meeting with Putin. What do you guys think about that?
He shouldn't.
I mean, at this point, it's going to be probably the most like kiss-ass interview you could ever imagine. They're more ideologically aligned than they are separate. I do think like the only thing that really separates Tucker from Putin is American nationalism versus Russian nationalism. But at the end of the day, they're ideologically in sync. He's not going to be hard on him in any sort of way. And his entire motivation is to make Putin more down to earth, more appealable to the general Republican base. And I think it's going to be a really, really bad thing for the Republican Party because they're going to end up being like, oh, this Putin guy, he seems like a great fella because he's lying to the American people, propaganda stuff that Tucker Carlson's going to absolutely agree with him on. And a lot of millions more people are going to be like, why are we giving money to Ukraine? Putin's, he's in the right. He's just fighting against NATO expansionism and absolute horseradish.
That's what Trump wants.
Probably, yeah.
That's what Trump wants. He wants us to be more aligned with Russia, and so
he just wants us to be more aligned with all the authoritarians across the world. I don't. Yeah. I mean, if you just listen to Joe Biden, Olaf, who's the German's prime minister? Whatever.
I'm still on the old one.
Yeah, no. I forgot it's something Olaf, whatever. Justin Trudeau, he's a great leader. Biden will say, "Oh, I love what New Zealand's doing." Blah 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 blah. No, Trump will be like, "I love Xi Jinping." Oh, Kim Jong Un is a great man. Oh, Vladimir Putin. Oh, he's a strong leader. The people respect him. You don't ever see him praising any sort of, Democrat, pro-democracy leaders. They're all fascists. They're all authoritarians. And if that's not indicative enough of Trump's own personal ideology, like, I don't know what is.
It's definitely indicative of that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also a case to be made that, like, sure, Tucker has the right to platform Putin, but when you platform certain types of people with certain types of ideologies, and you're giving them, that main stage in this country, then it just normalizes that type of rhetoric to the American people.
Especially if you don't intend on being hard on them or making them actually face the issues, or if you're just going to be gassing him up and kissing his ass, it's just going to solidify every single thing that he's saying with the people that already support Tucker, which, like I said, they were already moving that direction, so it's not surprising to me, but I think we can all predict how that's going to go.
True.
Any other final
Unfortunately.
thoughts? We're a little bit past time. Any other final
No, my
closing
final
thoughts? Yeah.
thoughts is we didn't even get a chance to go over a lot of the stuff that we wanted to go over, but that's because the topic was so good. I
Yeah.
mean, for
Yeah.
me,
We do a flash round.
yeah, yeah. So, well, we have to table the flash round for that one, but I think that for us, what we're, I think we, there's a quote says, I think Joe Biden says it. We're fighting for the soul of America.
Sounds like
And I
Biden.
think, yeah, it does sound like
Hmm.
Biden. And I think that what we're trying to accomplish, I think, even on this platform and several different other platforms, are doing the same thing, is to try to reawaken the soul of America. When I
Hmm.
start asking questions like, "Hey, it's it's not okay that we have such a high homeless rate, but
Yeah.
then we have all these Fortune 500 companies, the most in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's not okay that we're having incarceration rates through the roof, but yet
Largest in the world.
largest in the world, and majority of that is for possession, not even a crime against anyone else.
Yeah.
You know,
Property crimes, like just none. The amount of non-violent criminals that are, you know,
it locked up. Yeah.
victimless
So
crimes.
exactly. So those are the things that I think that our progressive message stands for. And I mean, one of the things that I think for me to sum up what I've learned from this conversation with us is just that we have a long way to go, and
Yeah.
we have political leaders right now that they don't really share our ideology of what the future looks like, and
They're
hopefully,
just more concerned with self-preservation of power, and the administration just being in power. They're not really concerned with. They don't. Biden doesn't have a vision. Nobody knows what Biden wants America to look like because
hmm
he doesn't. He's not good at campaigning on that kind of stuff. He just sort of I'm better than Trump. Do you really
not the other
want
guy.
this guy? Yeah, it's. I think we're better than campaigning off of the other candidate being bad. I think we can. I think we can inspire Americans. I think that we have better ideas. I think that a lot of ideas haven't been tried, and I think that they would be able to appeal to people across the board. But I don't think that
Yeah.
they're focused on that right now because just fear of Trump. Which once we're past Trump, I'm not saying Republicans are going to get better, but at least maybe we'll be able to focus on the issues or at least on something new. I'm just so sick of
Mm.
Trump, Hillary, Biden, all the same exact players. I just want to see something. The reason Trump got elected in the first place is people were just sick of the same two kind of
Yeah,
candidates and wanted to just throw a hand grenade in the middle of the field or whatever, shake things up, see, just break the system. They want something new. That's all the American people really, really want. They want something new that is gives them hope, gives them something to fight for. Because right now, a lot of people are just like, my vote doesn't matter. Even if my vote did matter, the politicians I'm voting for aren't going to do anything. Why even show up to vote? I think we need to give people reasons to do that.
absolutely. And I think honestly, I think the Biden campaign, well, or even just Biden himself, does have a vision, but just the water is getting muddied with
Mm-hmm.
that fear of Trump and Trumpism. Because once you
Yeah.
start talking
Mhm.
about your vision and not everyone is on board with that vision, then you're starting to kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit by I don't know, like opening up doorways for the threat to not be thwarted in case your vision is too radical for some people or
Mm-hmm.
something. So I just
Mhm.
think they're just trying to play it as safe as possible. But for people under the age of 40, it gets a little tiresome
Oh,
to
exactly. And
constantly,
especially young voters, they're not really aware of a lot of, I mean, they just see what he's not accomplishing and what he's not fighting for. They don't see exactly the motivation for why, and it's all strategic, and he really does share your values. And, if he had the magic wand, he would give us universal health care and paid family leave and all this and that. But like you said, it's the amount of fear that that leads them to taking super not conservative in the sense of politically conservative, but like restrained positions that don't really inspire or advocate for any sort of change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then a lot of the things that the president's administration has been doing very good and very well is just stuff that are only policy wonks are talking about. Like, do you hear the average American voter talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, or how Biden is helping not necessarily stop the student debt problem, because he's tried, and we have the situation we're in, but
Mm-hmm.
trying to mitigate interest rates and stuff like that. Like, there are certainly things that are happening that people just aren't really talking about and aren't really giving him credit for,
Yeah.
because they're not hot button issues.
He's not very good at taking credit the same way Trump will take credit for stuff that he had absolutely no involvement in.
Yeah.
And that's dumb, but like at the same time, his voters don't know the difference. So they're gonna give him credit for stuff he didn't do, and it's gonna make him have a lot more happy followers and supporters. And I think Biden needs to just talk about the stuff he did do.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to lie. He just has to talk about stuff that he actually helped people. Like, this has
Effectively.
changed. This has changed. This has never happened in this country. The union protection has never been this strong. This, that. If you really, really hammer down the issues and the things he did to change, I think it would be, people start to realize, oh, this country has actually changed a lot in the last 3 years. And
Yeah.
I'm not mad about the changes. And then instead of him advocating for, let's stay the same, Americans, let's not have Trump get elected, and let's just keep doing what we're doing. It sounds a lot better when you see things that he has done, instead of, well, is my life that great? My life's not that great, so Biden must not be that great. You know what I mean? People like to translate their personal life and how they're doing in personal life and be like, this is because of the presidency. Mm-hmm. This is because of the people who are in power. Which,
like, oh no, the gas prices are high right now.
Yeah, as if Biden's like,
exactly.
Let's raise them another 50 cents. Let's just... They don't understand capitalism. That's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The economy... Sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was saying they don't understand capitalism. What comes up must come down. What comes down must come up. That's just the way it is.
Just the economy is such a complex force in the world that the majority of people don't understand even like the most basic happenings of it, let alone the more complex systems. I certainly don't understand most of that shit, but I can tell you that the president is not solely responsible for gas prices, and just little things like that. But there's a million different factors that go into every single little thing that impacts our lives. It's not just, a direct correlation between what the president does or, even what the federal government does. Just there are all of these different things that are happening right now.
And even the Inflation Reduction Act, it's a little bit misleading to attribute the reduction in rise in inflation to Biden when you don't realize why inflation was happening in the first place. Like it was a result of the pandemic, and it was a result of people not going out and consuming for a couple years, and then having the money to do so, and the purchasing power that they gained. And there's so many different factors that go into why inflation's going up and down and prices are changing. And Biden did things that helped around the margins, and it really helps set a certain precedent. But it doesn't. At the end of the day, if it was Trump, it would not be substantially different unless he did something one way or another to really affect it. At the end of the day, it was gonna rebound eventually. And I definitely think Biden had a role in fixing that, but like, it's misleading to attribute almost anything economically to the political system. There's a lot of global factors. All right, I don't want to get too deep into anything else. We've gone over time. I'm glad we did, but we had some good things we touched on. Keep going.
Yeah, like I told you guys, we had a great conversation, and I think that we have more to come in terms of bringing Brianna back on and diving a little bit more deeper into the. I really want her take on the cultural aspects of the different demographics on how the Democratic Party, especially the progressives, can touch those different areas and different gaps. Especially being from New York, you've been around so many different groups of people and culturally, and so I'm really interested in seeing your take on that. So
Yeah, I find your takes very insightful. I definitely think we need to have a conversation
Thank you.
in the future. We need,
yeah,
we need to be more
awesome.
consistent with our
Right.
streaming schedule too, so we can have more guests on frequently. So we're gonna work on that too, everybody.
Yeah, Steph's 100% on that, and like we've both been, working, and we're going to try to come out with more consistent scheduling. Stay tuned about that. Steph will let you know.
Yeah,
Obviously, I'll
we
let you
should
know.
theoretically have some big name guests. Maybe we'll see. We're working on it.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. We're gonna see
Even though
what
Brianna,
we do.
you were a big guest. We're
Yeah,
talking about
Ah,
some national level guest.
yeah. Which
So we're working on it.
we can always help.
me with my 4,000 Twitter followers. Thank you.
That's more than I have. So you have
Yeah,
4 times the reach I do.
exactly. Your voice is big. You're
Yeah.
awesome. All right, guys. Well, we'll let you off for tonight, but stay tuned for our weekend editions that are coming soon. Seth will let you guys know more about it on Twitter.
Mhm.
But we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, we'll
Alrighty,
drop
thank you
any
very much.
links so you can follow Brianna
Yes,
in
Brianna.
whatever projects you're affiliated with right now. Everybody,
And your Twitter
give
handle,
us
just quickly.
yeah.
Quickly, your Twitter handle for our guests.
I don't know how to put it in the chat, but
But just say it. Just tell people your
I
Twitter
am
handle.
at B1Coil on Twitter and most of the social platforms. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
It's not that hard.
we'll put it in the description, guys. No worries.
Alrighty.
Well, thank you for coming on. I'm sorry we had to work around the schedule so many times and reschedule this and that, and I'm glad we finally had this conversation.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too, for sure. I'm happy to be back whenever.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. We'll look forward to
You
it.
have a great night.
You as well.
Everybody